In this Blender tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make procedural lava that looks great but doesn't take many nodes to actually make. I will then show you how to apply this material to other objects such as a monkey head, and lastly, I'll show you how to animate it so that you can make realistic lava lakes. So let's get started. So for this tutorial, I'm going to first make the material on a sphere. So I'm going to delete the default cube and the default light and add a UV sphere. Then in the world settings, I'm going to click on this dot and change it from color to environment texture. Then I'm going to find my HDRIs, which you can get on Polyhaven. And for this tutorial, I'll use the studio one that comes default with Blender. So I'll press open image and then I'll go into the rendered view to see the lighting. Then I'll set up the camera by zooming in a bit and then making the frame a square. And then I'll go to the render settings, go down to film and press transparent in order to get rid of the HDRI in the background but keep the lighting. Now for this tutorial we need to make the sphere much more smooth, so I'm going to add a subdivision modifier and crank it up so that we can get more topology. Then I'll apply the subdivision modifier and shade smooth. Now to set up their environment, go to the corner and drag out a new window and then change the window to a shader editor. And that's it for the setup. Let's start to make a new material by pressing new, and as always we get a principled BSDF and a material output. But before we do any texturing, we need to make these bumps by using the displacement on the material output. So drag out from the dot of the displacement and then add in a displacement node. Then from the height, add a noise texture and press Ctrl T, linking the object to the vector of the mapping. But as you can see, there's no actual displacement, and that's because we haven't enabled bumps and displacement. So go down to the material tab, go under the settings menu and then change from bumps only to bumps and displacement. And as you can see, we now have displacement, and we can control the amount of displacement by increasing the value of the scale or decreasing it. Now it's a bit harsh right now, so I'm going to turn it down to about here, and then you can play around with the noise texture. You can change the settings to whatever you want, but what's important for this tutorial is to increase the detail to the maximum value, which is 15. This will basically make the rock texture a bit more realistic, as it has a lot more detail as you would expect in a rock. Then, because we're making lava and lava is a liquid, play with the distortion a bit. You don't want too much, but you definitely want a little bit to make it look like the lava is flowing. So I'm happy with that, so I'm going to go to the principled BSDF and we're going to start making the actual material. Change the base color to absolute black and then drag the roughness down to about 0.2. This will make the rock look a bit more melted, which will obviously convey that it's very hot. Now let's make the lava. So Shift A and add an emission node and then select both the emission and the principled BSDF and press Ctrl 0. This will add a mixed shader in between them, which we're going to need in just a second. Now to get the lava color, from the color of the emission node, drag a wire out and add a black body node. This will add this kind of orange color because if you didn't know, a black body is basically a star. And if you know anything about astrophysics, you would know that the color of a star depends on its temperature. And so to adjust the color, you have to adjust the temperature in the black body node. So we're almost there. Now we just have to add an ambient occlusion node and connect the color to the factor of the mix shader. And as you can see, we are nearly there. But I want to be able to control the amount of lava showing because right now it's a bit too much. So add a math node and put it in between the ambient occlusion and the mix shader. And with this node you can control how much lava is showing and how much of the molten rock is showing. Just make sure this value is positive, and if you want to increase the amount of lava showing, decrease the value, and if you want more of the rock to show, increase the value. If you want, you can also increase the strength of the emission, and yeah, that's basically it. You can change all the other settings as well if you want, but to show you just how customizable this is, I'll change out the displacement texture, and as you can see you get this really cool material if you add the wave texture. Obviously if you want to make it look like lava, then you have to increase the distortion to make it look a lot more random, and as you can see you get a slightly different effect. Now I personally found that the noise texture works the best, so let me just change it to that. And now I'll show you how to apply this material to other types of objects. For example, the monkey. So I'll add in the monkey and position it so you can see it well. Then I'll add the lava material, and as you can see it doesn't really work, and that's because for this technique you need to add more topology. So go to the modifiers and add a subdivision surface again, crank it up, and as you can see the displacement is starting to work. So if you're actually going to use this material, make sure that you use the subdivision modifier because otherwise it won't work. Then of course I'm going to change some of the settings to make the lava look a bit better, and as you can see it works like a dream. Now for the last part of the tutorial I'm going to add this texture to a plane because I feel like most of you probably just want to make some kind of lava lake or I don't know, something to do with a plane. So I'll add that and subdivide it to make sure that it has enough topology, and as you can see it makes it a kind of circle. So change the type of subdivision to simple and that'll get you the shape back. Then play around with the scales both on the displacement node and the noise texture, and as you can see you have a decent lava effect. Now I feel like for the plane you probably should use the wave texture, especially if you want to animate it. So add the wave texture, change all the values as before to be able to see the lava just as you want it, and make sure to obviously increase the distortion to make it look a lot more random. Then on this bottom setting you can control the phase of the texture. Now because the wave texture is very simple, it can be repeated in a loop. Let me just show you how this works. So if you're at the start of your animation, press W, then drag the timeline a bit more to, let's just say, around the 200 mark, increase this bottom setting and press W again, and as you can see it animates it in a kind of cycle. Now if you want to make it a loop, then make sure the value here is a multiple of pi. And yeah, that's about it for this tutorial. If you found it helpful, make sure to subscribe, and if you have any problems, put them in the comments. With that said, thanks for watching, goodbye.